In today's video, we're going to discuss and talk about the differences and the benefits and the drawbacks between a high wrist and a low wrist grip. So I've had a fair amount of questions over the years while I'm shooting, through my seminars, during these videos, lots of different stuff on why you would want to choose a high wrist over a low wrist or a low wrist over a high wrist. And in this video, I'm going to cover why I would choose one grip over the other.
You're watching the Jake Kaminsky YouTube channel.
For those of you that are new here, my name's Jake Kaminsky. I'm a two-time Olympic silver medalist in the sport of archery. We're going to make this channel a great resource for all types of archery, from form to tuning, you name it. I'm working on covering lots of information on everything. So if you haven't yet, hit that subscription button and the notification bell. That way you're notified when I upload new videos. I'm working on producing a lot of content, and you don't want to miss out on what I've got coming out. Alright, so over the years, I've shot many different types of grips. I've built them myself out of putty like this. I've shaped them with wood grips that come stock on bows. I've done lots of different stuff. I've settled into a few things that I like personally. I'll cover how to build a grip in another video shortly after this one. But in this video, I wanted to give you an idea and cover the differences in between high wrist and low wrist grips, benefits and drawbacks to both, and ultimately trying to help you make a better choice as to which one to choose. So before we discuss the benefits and drawback, first we need to talk about there are two different points on the grip that are important to us. There is something that is called the pivot point. The pivot point is inside the throat of the grip, where your hand in the webbing of your thumb would be placed up inside the grip. That is called the pivot point. Now the pressure point is another area where you are pushing pressure, or the centrally located area that you are trying to put pressure on the actual grip. It should not be in the throat of the grip or the pivot point of the grip. We'll explain that in the video where I talk about building grips, but essentially why that is because if I was putting pressure up high like this, I have to control that position with muscles in my wrist and in my forearm. If I just relax my hand down and push pressure down here, these muscles are not engaged in my forearm, so they won't be affected under pressure and ultimately when you're competing, so your accuracy won't change. So your pressure point is different than your pivot point. Now, the benefits to a high-wrist grip is that your pivot point and your pressure point become closer together. So as I take my hand, if this is my pivot point, and this is my pressure point, and I have a low wrist grip, you can see there is a difference between the two. But the higher my wrist goes, the closer the pivot point and the pressure point gets, yeah? So that means when I have a change in pressure accidentally, in theory, I'm exerting pressure on the bow through that axis less differently than as if I had a low wrist grip. So all it does, the benefits to a high wrist grip in theory are more forgiveness because it moves your pressure point and your pivot point closer together on this plane when you're exerting pressure up and down differently. Now, a benefit to a low wrist grip is it is easier to keep your bow shoulder strong. It is easier to keep your hand in a stronger position, and it feels easier to maintain control over the bow. Now, the reason basically is, and in my experience and everyone I've talked to, the higher your wrist is, the harder your bow shoulder is to keep down. Your bow shoulder will start to creep up if you get too high of a wrist grip, especially if you're not very strong, and definitely if you're not exerting forces on the bow correctly. I've covered a video on how to exert forces on the bow correctly as far as like what I am looking for, and that's essentially tension and direction. And I'll put a link in the description below, plus a card at the top here on where you'll be able to find that video in case you're interested in learning more about that. So, the benefits of the low wrist grip is it's stronger. It's easier to keep your bow shoulder down. It's easier to maintain your form structure overall. It may not be as forgiving, and so that's a potential drawback to a low wrist grip. But if you're exerting forces on the bow correctly and you're pushing your pressure and your pressure point very consistently, you won't have that vertical variance that you would be looking to mitigate with the high wrist grip. So, obviously, the benefits of both are pretty clear, cut, and dry. Potentially more consistent, easier to keep your bow shoulder down. Now, the drawbacks to each is just simply the inverse of that. The drawbacks to this is potentially less forgiveness vertically, and the drawbacks to this is potentially more difficulty in keeping your bow shoulder down. Well, actually, in fact, absolutely more difficulty in keeping your bow shoulder down. It is not even potential. Definitely, I can speak from experience, and everyone else that I've ever talked to, higher risk grips, especially once you get really high, you start to have a lot of difficulty keeping your bow shoulder down.
Thanks for watching, and thank you to my Patreon supporters. If you want to become a Patreon supporter or check out books, apparel, and some seminar info, head to jkaminski.com, and be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to be notified every time a new video is uploaded. And I appreciate you watching. Thank you again.